Hello, everyone. I'm Anke Corbin, your host on this MovingFast Tech Podcast. So, joining me today is Maher Hanafi. He is the Vice President of Engineering at Betterworks. I'm going to let Maher introduce Betterworks for you because it's a really interesting company. Well, Maher, welcome, and thank you very, very much for joining me on the MovingFast podcast today and just sharing your thoughts.
Hi, Anke. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Very excited to be here. So my name is Maher. I'm currently the VP of Engineering at Betterworks. We are an enterprise performance management SaaS. It's HR tech, so very moving space. A lot of great tools and software out there to serve our enterprise customers. And I have been there for 2 years, leading our engineering team, building hopefully better software and integrating a lot of AI. And I would be really happy to go deeper into this and tell you more about it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to ask you some of those great questions. So I always try to set the stage. The MovingFast Tech Podcast, it's a free-flowing format. Now I know we met in advance. We talked a little bit about some of the cool things that we can talk about, and I'll ask you some questions that might guide that. But really, it's always up to you to take it in some other paths and, make it your podcast. So let's get started.
Sure.
In that earlier conversation that we had, you mentioned, and I really, really love this because I think this is such a cool topic, that you mentioned that you were a passionate gamer and WoW player. For those of you, I'm assuming everyone knows WoW, World of Warcraft, but how did you go from being a gamer to a VP of engineering? That's a really interesting path. And what were some of the early learnings that kind of helped you in your journey?
Well, that's a that's a very interesting question. I mean, again, it's funny how, life goes when you start, before you get into the professional world. I used to be an engineering student in telecommunication, and I was working towards my bachelor degree of engineering. At that time, I was very obsessed with video games from early age, obviously, but at that specific time, I was playing heavily massive multiplayer online games like World of Warcraft. And it was taking a lot of my time, and it was a huge passion of mine that at some point I thought it's going to be interesting if I go and be on the other side of the table and make games. So after completing my bachelor degree of engineering in telecommunication, I decided to pursue, again, a career in gaming. So I looked into what a game developer should have from a skills perspective. I started teaching myself these techniques and technologies, programming on C++, OpenGL, graphics, image processing, and all of that. And 2 years later, I ended up working for Electronic Arts, making games and working on games that I used to play as a kid. Now
That's
it
so
comes to
cool.
how, thank you. Now when it comes to how World of Warcraft shaped my kind of engineering path or journey, definitely early on, and when I was playing this game, and this is a very deep game where you spend a lot of time, a lot of hours, you do a lot of activities, around the core main loop of the game. And part of this was to be part of a guild. And a guild is a team of like tens of people to a few hundreds of people. And over the years, I was, you know, going up in the ladder of the guild of this virtual team, this game team, until I got to become a guild master. A guild master is again like a CEO in the game. So I was making key decisions when it comes to who is part of the team, who does what, who gets what rewards at the end of each game and stuff like that. So to maybe help the audience here understand a little bit and connect more with the approach and how I ended up over years and years later, I ended up finding these connections and unconventional connections between my history playing video games and how my career developed to become an engineering leader. And I think one of the key connection for me that triggered at some point was how I was able to build high performing teams. Again, I did this in the game. A few years after I became a guild master, my guild became number two on the server I was playing on, knowing that the first team was a professional team. They were paid to play that game. Mine was not professional, and I was able to turn things around. And when I started, it was like a random team, but when I left, it was really a very strong team. So that was again, if you connect that to the reality of like being an engineering leader, how you build a high performing team, how can you assemble a diverse group of engineers or resources and build around their unique strengths and
Mhm.
make a great outcome out of it. So again, many years later, I connect with that and I was like, oh, I did this before in game, I can do this in my job. And over the years, I felt really very happy with the outcome. And with this experience that I had from um, kind of an experience I was not expecting at all. I was not expecting my gaming passion to influence any of that. Another thing is also, I think, how we adapt to change in a game. I played this game for many years, and then there were many changes. There were many people come and go, different structures. So that kind of built more resiliency as an engineer first, and then as an engineering leader to always adapt with the change and be able to navigate complexity and adopt, your team structure, your skills, and make as much as you can lemonade with the lemons you have, right? Like that was the idea that at the end of the day was key. Um, and then another aspect was communication. Again, playing a video game, having to be on audio all the time, talk to each other. Uh, People I played with were across the globe. I was speaking, second and third languages to be able to communicate with these people around the globe. And again, manage all of that. When you reflect about my experience now, managing engineering teams that are distributed, across different time zones, speaking different languages, it's just at the end of the day it taught me the importance of how can you better communicate, how can you delegate, how can you build a structure that is autonomous and well structured to perform. um, and one other important aspect that honestly I didn't think it will help me one day was how I was able to resolve conflicts in the guild at the time when we were playing games. It's built around people, and people are difficult.
Mhm.
And how would you resolve conflicts and problems, and make sure you move on and you build better connections between the group to get the best outcome was a key thing that over the years later I recognize as something I built up. I flexed that muscle before, so I was able to navigate some conflicts I had in my engineering leadership experience. So all in, again, it was unexpected. It's unconventional, obviously, but I ended up really learning a lot from that. And then years later, recognizing these patterns and be more confident in my leadership, honestly.
I think that's fantastic. And I think it does apply to who we are as a person, right? There's so many layers that you build upon over the years, and they do all come together in future activities. And I think this one is really interesting. You should write a book on that as far as management, engineering, leadership, because it's so interesting. I think we could have the whole podcast just on that, but I know we have a number of other things we want to talk about. Um,
Yeah.
one of the premises of the Moving Fast Tech podcast is to kind of consider technology is moving really fast, lots and lots of processes and systems and softwares to use. How do you, as a technology leader, kind of stay on top of that? How do you like, take that? Like AI is a great example. I mean, it doesn't have to be the only one, but how do you get caught up on it? How do you then get your team? How do you stay ahead of the game, right? It's another game, but it's a stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, this is one other great question. I mean, honestly, it's all about being, as a technology leader, I think you need to be able to assess the landscape, understand, some of the movement that is happening, trust your judgment of how things move, and try to be ahead of the game as much as you can. And I think one of the key aspects of this to be successful as an engineering leader and a fast-moving, space like ours today is to be able to really leverage continuous learning in an agile way. So this is not just about, learning more and more over time. It's also, how you can adapt to the learning as you grow in your career because you don't have the same amount of time, you don't have the same amount, the same responsibilities. The space you're tackling is different. And as an engineering leader, you will always be leaving your comfort zone. Like this happens at almost, very frequently, and you need to be fine with that, and you need to take that as a good at kind of challenge but also an advantage, and you take it with a good attitude. So um And to keep up with these things, I think one of the things that helped me a lot was to be able to leverage diverse sources of information. Again, my background as an engineer and then as an engineering manager and then engineering leader went through different disciplines. I mean, I started again in gaming, and then
Mhm.
I picked up mobile when mobile started to be a great movement, kind of late 2000s. And I think it's similar to a certain degree with what we see today in AI, but mobile at that time was like a big thing that shifted completely and transformed the industry. So at that time, I picked up mobile very quickly. I again taught myself a lot of things. I started building personal apps, and then I ended up, starting a whole business on the side by, having hundreds of personal apps, millions of users across the globe using my apps because mobile was so trendy and it was so big, and I picked it up very early. So
Mhm.
this is one of the, good messages for engineers or current engineering leaders who want to grow in their career is always to be curious, look into these kind of opportunities to learn and to really adapt your style of learning. Um, and then another thing is really to focus on practical knowledge. Like I can go and learn about, memory allocation in a certain technical stack, but as where I am today, will that help me grow my career? Will that help my team move forward and move the needle for our business and what we do? Not necessarily. So really focus on practical knowledge and what is most important for you at a different stage is very important. Um, Another thing is to stay as much as possible close to the work. Like again, I wanna learn, when I start my journey around 5 years ago learning about AI, because this is not something I had, a lot of background in, and coming from gaming and mobile and then web and distributed systems and cloud services, getting into AI was a little bit difficult for me at some point, but I was trying to get close to the work, worked very closely with the engineers I had who I used to manage, but I also learned a lot from. And I was
Wow.
asking them questions as if I was like an intern in the team, like how we do this, how we do that, how these things work. But alongside all of that, I was going deeper into learning myself and bringing all that kind of learning with the practice, staying close to the work, connect all these dots, and you get a good recipe for success as an engineering leader. And one other thing that helped me a lot is to be as much as possible agnostic to the technologies, to the stack. I think we need
Mhm.
to understand the concepts and the direction with which, where the technology is going with the speed of innovation, all of that, get all these together to not be committed or married to a very specific stack that might get you in a position where you become a little bit more opinionated about things and makes
Mm.
makes it hard for you to move forward when things change, which we all see how fast things are changing today. So being
Yeah.
that agnostic when it comes to these things will help a lot an engineering leader to move forward. Um, and as we see, generative AI has been, one of the greatest innovations out there. It's built up on top of, decades of innovation in AI. But I think as an engineering leader, also use that. It's a tool out there to help you grow, to help you learn, to help you move fast and automate some of the tasks you don't need to spend much time on and focus on your growth and your impact as an engineering leader. So generative AI in the last 2 years has been, transformative in the way I learn and grow and keep up with things too.
One of the things you had mentioned to me earlier that is that you really believe in leadership by example. And so you
Yeah.
now just said, hey, I've built efficiency tools. I'm building things that help my day to day. That's how you think about that, right? How do you know, how did you introduce Gen AI to your engineers? Had you already played with it? Did you already build some light things? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think I embraced generative AI as soon as it came out, November 2022. At that time, I was working for another company that was an AI company. We were doing predictive AI.
Mm,
And then when generative AI came up, it was like a good transition and a good leverage for us to build even a better, more experience. And then when I joined Betterworks, obviously I had that context, I had that experience. I did enough proof of concepts to really see its potential. And we
mhm,
were already starting a vision where generative AI became a priority for us in terms of an adoption, how we use it internally, but also built in our product. So what helped me a lot is again, be very close to the work, be hands-on when needed, help the team, especially like build the vision that will everyone will stand behind and really push forward.
mm,
And align different stakeholders. I think generative AI today is one of these transformative innovation and technologies that are considered like a little bit more across different disciplines, and you need to have many stakeholders involved in making decisions to make it successful. It's not like any other technologies out there where sometimes, you can just purely drive this by product engineering and design teams. This one is a little
Right.
bit more across different kind of disciplines and teams.
Right.
So I did my best to stay close to the team and then learning as much as I can from different resources out there, practice on my time, do hands-on work, bring good examples to the team, support the team in their vision, create a good environment for innovation, for people to experiment, provide resources and time for them to really get the best out of this technology. That was really moving fast as well. So helping the team to not be overwhelmed with the pace of how things move and focus on having key impact and finding that kind of good match between big impact, small lift, or like really light lift. And when you achieve that, taking things from a proof of concept to product, a live product in Gen AI has been a challenge for a lot of businesses out there. But at least for us at Betterworks, I think it has been a good, successful journey that I have been talking about, obviously, a lot.
Yeah, for a while. How are you calculating the ROI? I mean, we all know that, generative AI is hot, it's important. Everyone's trying to figure out what it is. There's lots of camps on whether it has a ROI currently or not. I'm curious how you're calculating it, and then how do you bring I know you mentioned you bringing your stakeholders along, but how are you doing that mostly on the business side to make sure that they also recognize the value and the limitations, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think ROI is one of the biggest challenges of generative AI today. I think it's still like a question that doesn't have a clear answer because at the beginning there was a lot of hype about generative AI, and every business out there was just trying to get generative AI for the purpose or for the sake of having, a powered by generative AI label. And
Hmm.
I think that led to misconceptions and led to deception, and it didn't work as great. So I think it's very important or essential to move beyond the hype and identify specific areas where generative AI can deliver tangible value. And that's where we did that Betterworks. We really had a good flywheel framework where we really could, plan for where generative AI can have the biggest impact, try to kind of understand that and align on how that will work, go and build it as a next step, and then go again and optimize for that flow and make sure that that feature, that implementation can grow, can have even more impact, and can serve our next iterations or next integrations with generative AI. So what I did is I was working with my all the different stakeholders of the business to align on what are the few things we can do that can bring the best value to our end users without us going too deep into the technology, taking too much risk. Again, there's a risk assessment here to be done in terms of cost, in terms of time you're spending, resources you're spending on integrating generative AI. And also early on, we saw a lot of skepticism and concerns when it comes to the adoption of AI. We are in a B2B SaaS enterprise space, very compliant HR tech space. So it's very hard to just build generative AI features and serve our customers. They have a lot of questions. There's a lot of things you need to explain to them. So another area of focus of ours were building responsible AI, building transparency and explanation on how generative AI works, what data we have access to, data governance, what kind of flow of data we have, and how can we protect the sensitive data of our customers. So at the end of the day, going back to the ROI, honestly, it's still like a question out there, but for us, it was more about having impact in serving our current customer and our future customer the best utility features we can have. That generative AI has a lot of impact, saves people a lot of time, help businesses move faster on their HR performance goals and objectives without the hassle of, focus on these little tasks. And, some of these are, take a lot of time, resources just to get started. With AI, you can get 80% of that done And our main focus is to keep the human being in the center of the loop. Like we have no plan to have AI, automate a lot of things to the point where people lose control on performance management. And again, this is not just our framework or our decision or our responsible AI. This is also what, the EU AI Act and other, compliance, laws systems out there will be going to when it comes to AI. Another thing when it comes to the risks, and you talked about this earlier, I think this is where I said again, our focus on responsible AI, our focus on really understanding how this technology works, and also focus on augmenting human capabilities and not replace the human being. So in other words, really make sure that this tool is bringing value to make the users, the human end users, better, more efficient, more responsible than to completely replace them by automating a bunch of things. We all know, the risks of hallucinations in AI. So that's where we have a lot of, guardrails and safeguards around, our use of AI. We double check. We have systems that will evaluate the responses, that will make sure everything from an input and output perspective is within the guidelines and the respected norms and the space we're in. And all this is also explained to our customers and explained to the end user so they know exactly what the AI impact or change was, and they really understand what happened here. And if there's anything going beyond these safeguards, it's not gonna be accepted. So again, it's still a very active space of development, understanding ROI, making sure, this becomes more measurable over time. But as of today, it's more about, again, building a tool that, empowers human beings to do better and to better manage performance than completely replacing them.
Yeah, I think that's actually really interesting, and it leads into the next question that I have, which I think I already know because you kind of touched on it, but what do you see as some of the biggest challenges for software developers and you as a leader within this space? Like, do you think that AI could replace developers at some point or just augment? Like, how do you think about that?
Very interesting question. I mean, I know there's a lot of, if you go to any of these social platforms out there, if you listen to some, you know, key, very loud voices out there, you'll hear about, the risk of replacing, software engineers, companies not hiring software engineers in the future because they believe AI is gonna do the job. So again, I think all these opinions are very nuanced and there is like a lot to figure out and see. I think the technology has to evolve to a point where we can see really its impact on the software development space. So far, it's in the copilot stage. It's, an assistant you have that will help you when you are coding and building. And we
Hmm.
had co-pilots and assistants for decades again. Like all the tools we use, all the development environments, all the plugins and extensions out there, the autocomplete, all these are tools that help engineers become more performant and do more with less. And I think AI today is at that stage. But the way things move in the future will be more about, learning more about this technology. And again, if we take it for granted the state we're in today, I'm not talking about AGI or the future of this, completely going, you know, becoming even smarter than the human being's brain. But from where we are today, especially if we want to focus on 2025, I think the key here is really to try as much as possible to stay ahead of the technology curve. I think it's going to
Yeah.
move fast. There will be more, tools out there. There are a lot of things happening. So I think as an engineering lead, first, I need to, be proactive about learning about these and bring them to my teams and have my engineers and my developers really leverage these tools as much as possible. We want to be as optimized as possible, leveraging the current technologies as best as possible. So that's where we are today. And I think, again, and for generative AI, there are many, many good outcomes out there that will enhance the performance of the engineers when it comes to writing tests and checking code standards and best practices, creating some design patterns. I don't think AI today is capable of really building complex applications from the ground up and completely replace engineers and teams. I don't see
Hmm.
that. I still believe it's an enhancement. A software engineer that is leveraging generative AI is better than an engineer who doesn't. But I don't think generative AI as a thing is replacing software engineers as of today.
Yeah,
So,
I totally agree with you. I think that's a perfect way of summarizing that. You know, throughout the podcast, you've talked about um, like learning and, you know, continuous improvement and being ahead of the curve. What are you reading? What are you listening to? How are you consuming knowledge? What could someone maybe that they haven't heard of? Can you give us a couple of examples of where are you finding where are you finding the knowledge to stay ahead? Like, what are some of the trusted sources that you like to really always look at and, you know, every day kind of check out, whatever that looks like for you?
Well, that's very interesting because I honestly feel like this is the best time ever to learn in a space like this, right? Like the amount of tools, resources, frameworks out there for anyone to learn about this, and very affordable, free to access, open source, anything, like name it. Everything is out there possible. You can become very efficient about this technology, very fully aware about everything that is happening in the space with
Mm-hmm.
very, with ease. For me, I think I want to name a few platforms or like communities I've been, very, very close to that helped me a lot develop and shape my understanding of the space we're in today, the technology in general. The first one is the AI maker space. This is a community where very rich content based, very video webinars, kind of hands-on work. I mean, I follow them on YouTube, on LinkedIn, they create a very high level um, explanations to the deep, deep technical aspect of, again, deep learning and generative AI and all of that, and transformer architecture. So early on, again, because I didn't have the deep technical understanding of AI and machine learning when I started, this was a very good way for me to get to the level of depth needed to really get excited and interested. And then you can go as deep as you want with, following them more and more over time. And
Mm-hmm.
they got me, I mean, they introduced me to many concepts that over time became like table stakes today, like RAG as an example, and how transformers work again, the transformer architecture, the decoder encoder architecture, some of the, again, more advanced techniques like fine tuning and all of these things, and chain of thoughts, and everything we see today from agents and beyond. So I think this is a good, again, I really advise this community as a good place to start, but then you can go deeper. And one of the other platforms or communities I follow, deep learning AI, Andrew Yang, I think, is a very popular and known AI expert in the space. They do have a lot of good material. They collaborate with a lot of companies, a lot of technologies out there to create very good content and material that is very curated and also for any level of expertise. And then the other one, last one, maybe on this list here, is ML Ops community. This is a community where it's a mix of like focused on AI and machine learning, but also how you really deploy, how you build the infrastructure, how you build the DevOps and ops operations to make it work. Because again, I mean, generative AI could be just an API call away. You send an input, you get an output. But in enterprise, if you want to build this, if you want to take it to the next level, there are a lot of things you need to do. You need to whole, depending on what you need to achieve, you can self-host. You need to manage your own infrastructure. You need to serve your customer in the most, safe, secure, responsible approach to the infrastructure to ensure, the less risk when it comes to data. So ML Ops community was one of these, places where I can go and really, read content, watch content, attend webinars, and really learn about how would you build infrastructure to serve generative AI. There are way more. I mean, honestly, I'm all over the place looking at many, many sources, which is, again, a blessing to have at this age of, AI and the way
Mm-hmm.
we want to learn. And I'm sure there are even more than that. So happy with the content I have. I'm very visual driven, podcast, video focused. I do more of that than reading books. Knowing that even books, I don't believe books today are keeping up with the of innovation, right? A book
Right.
that came out a year ago about generative AI could be at the last year of like its relevance, I
Absolutely.
suppose.
Month to month, everything's changing. And those are big,
Exactly.
big steps every month, it seems like. Yeah,
It's moving crazy fast. Yeah.
it really is. Those are really great suggestions. I hadn't heard of all of those communities, and we'll make sure to share those in the blog that we do as a recap of this podcast. So, Mayor, fantastic podcast, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your leadership journey and your perspective on Gen AI and just really how you got there. Super interesting. Really appreciate your candid discussion and just sharing your thoughts with us on the Moving Fast Tech podcast. It was really great to have you as our guest today.
Thank you so much. I really, yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for, the structure of the podcast, the questions, going deeply into my personal and professional career, and how each one, influenced the other. I think it was a great topic, and I'm very excited and passionate about these. So thank you so much for driving this.
Absolutely. So nice to have you. So, to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast channel and just join us next time for another Moving Fast Tech podcast so you can continue to hear from really interesting industry leaders about the latest technology, how they're preparing their company for the future, and just challenges that they think about all the time. Thanks for joining us.